countries with the rudest people, according to Tourist. Well, before we talk about the rudest countries, the 5 countries that are ranked the friendliest are Portugal, Netherlands, New Zealand, Spain, and at number 1 is Canada. So if you live in any of those countries, good job! However, at number 5 for the rudest country is none other than China. But guys, us Americans aren't too far off because we were ranked as the 6th rudest country. Next, at number 4, travelers say Germany is one of the rudest countries, but Germans claim it's just them being straightforward. Now at number 3 is the UK, because tourists say they're a bit passive-aggressive and noisy. However, at number 2 is Russia, because visitors say they avoid small talk and generally don't smile much. And finally, at number 1 is France, and France is literally ranked number 1 on almost every single list on the internet.
Here's some crazy history you were not taught in school. Benjamin Franklin was not trusted to write the Declaration of Independence because they thought he'd sneak in some jokes. A 15-year-old Andrew Jackson told a British officer to shine his own shoes. Abraham Lincoln founded the Secret Service hours before he was assassinated. The photographer who snapped Einstein's office after his death bribed his way in with a bottle of scotch. A 12-year-old boy lied about his age to fight in World War I and saw combat at 13 years old before his mom dragged him home. Britain spent 40% of its national budget to free slaves in 1833. The loan wasn't paid off until 2015. Greek statues weren't white. They were once painted in bright colors, but the pigment faded over time. Archaeologists dug up 35 perfectly preserved bottles of cherries and berries from the 1700s at George Washington's estate. Chef Boyardee was drafted in World War II. His factory ran 24/7, making army rations.
This is why you should never explore abandoned buildings. In 2013, 3 boys named Paul, Tim, and Max all lived in Louisiana. There were tons of abandoned houses in their neighborhood left over from Hurricane Katrina, and the boys all loved to explore them. One day, Paul asked his 2 friends to explore an abandoned hospital a few miles out of town. They agreed, and the 3 boys set off. They explored every floor of the hospital except for the basement. But upon walking down to the basement, they discovered that it was flooded with over 4 feet of water. They walked down the stairs and shined their lights on the murky water. It took them to the middle of a hallway, but they couldn't see down either side. Paul thought it would be a good idea to wade down the flooded hallway. His friends stayed back when all of a sudden there was a huge splash. Paul shined his flashlight down the basement and saw a huge creature swimming towards him. His friends began to scream at him, and Paul ran back to the staircase. The 3 boys escaped the hospital and went home to never return. They believe they heard an alligator, but will never be sure.
The Menendez brothers. The trial ended with 2 deadlocked juries, causing the boys to be retried, but during the second trial, the judge didn't allow the boys to use the sexual abuse as a defense. Both brothers were convicted of 2 counts of first-degree murder, with both of them receiving life sentences and no possibility of parole. They then didn't see one another for 22 years. Until 2018, they were housed in the same unit, and when they met, they embraced and burst into tears. The child psychologist that works with the brothers claims that the boys are innocent and their father was in fact a monster. A cousin of the boys also states that he remembers Lyle telling him during his childhood that his father was doing things to him that no parent should ever do. Others believe, however, that the boys are simply using any excuse they can, given that they are actually held accountable for their crimes. But ultimately, it's up to you to decide the innocence of
scary facts you wish you never knew.
On an American $1 bill, there's an owl in the upper left-hand corner of the 1 encased in the shield, and a spider hidden in the front upper right-hand corner. When someone tells you that they have a question for you, all the bad things you did recently run through your mind. People who don't dream usually have a personality disorder. Typing 444 will turn on TikTok's dark mode. When you suddenly wake up at night, it means someone is watching you. If you out a drop of liquor on a scorpion, it will go mad instantly. Coconuts kill about 150 people each year. Leave a note on a table before you leave the house. If you come back and it's gone, leave the house immediately and call the police. If someone misses you, they are 80% more likely to appear in your dreams. If a person sleeps a lot, they are sad. Someone invented Wi-Fi without having Wi-Fi. How is that possible?
Have you guys heard of the man who murdered his mother and threw her body in a dumpster? On June 3rd, 2022 at 6:50 a.m., police found the dismembered body of 62-year-old Tomoko Hoytslin in a dumpster outside of her apartment complex in Camarillo, California. Police went to the apartment complex after receiving a call about suspicious circumstances, and that's when they found the body of Tomoko. After obtaining a search warrant, Tomoko's son, 25-year-old David, barricaded himself in the apartment that he lived in with his mother, but police were able to get in and arrest him for her murder. Investigators found evidence linking him to the murder, but at this point, we don't really know what that evidence is. And the county medical examiner officers confirmed that Tomoko was strangled to death, but the motive is still not clear. David is being held on a $3 million bond, and if he's convicted, he faces 25 years to life in prison.
Traditional wedding clothes in different countries. United Kingdom, Scotland, Wales, the Netherlands, Germany, Russia, Japan, China, Mexico, Korea,
Mysterious videos that can't be explained. This security cam footage from a library taken at 5:30 in the morning shows something kinda confusing. Out of nowhere, a book from the shelf seems to just fall over on its own and lands perfectly on its side. The library is closed and nobody's inside of it. But somehow one book was perfectly pulled out from the shelf and landed so that it balanced on the side of its pages. It would be next to impossible to pull out one book from the shelf without disturbing the others. And when the librarians tried to balance the same book on its side, they couldn't do it. What do you guys think happened to this book? Comment below. Next we have this dude from Florida who wanted to film himself practicing his golf swings to try and get better. But as he picks up the camera to stop the video, he catches a lamp swinging somehow by itself over his dining room table. The man freaks out and it's pretty apparent that he's not doing this. He then pans to the side and catches his cupboards opening and closing. Is this proof of ghosts?
Dirty animal facts that biology class definitely didn't teach you. Part 1. Diego, the unstoppable sex tortoise who is 100 years old, lives on the Galapagos archipelago and has fathered over 800 tortoises. When a male anglerfish meets a female, he fuses with her body, donating his brain, heart, and eyes, pretty much becoming a pair of testicles dangling from her body. Hey darling. Nice testes. In 1912, biologists had to cover up the first published studies of penguins after observing them being the literal worst. Male on male penguin action, male on dead penguin action, male on unwilling female penguin action. Oh, and action in exchange for pebbles. If Finding Nemo was scientifically accurate, Marlin would have just changed into a female clownfish and mated with Nemo after his mother's death. Nemo! Oh, and fish don't talk, but more importantly, the whole changing into a...
This may be one of the scariest urban legends I've ever heard that actually turned out to be true. So during the 1970s, there was a terrifying funhouse in Long Beach, California called the Laugh in the Dark. And this urban legend began circulating that all the mannequins inside were fake except for one. Something about this mannequin just seemed wrong. All the others looked fake, but this one in particular, they say it looked a little too human. A bunch of kids even said the area around the mannequin had a terrible smell. This next part is where I pooped my pants. So a few years go by and then one day a TV crew comes to use Laugh in the Dark as one of their filming locations. The director is trying to line up the perfect shot, but he just doesn't like the way this one mannequin looked on camera. So he asks one of the crew members to move it out of the way. So the crew member goes over, starts moving the mannequin when the arm completely falls off. Inside the mannequin's arm is human bone. The kids were right all along. The mannequin was a mummified corpse.
This man claims he found a portal to another dimension in Washington. Part 2. Sorry for the wait. The next day, the dog was found outside the hole alive. Amazed by what happened, Mel went onto a radio talk show to talk about the strange hole. Within 24 hours, Mel claims the military seized his land where the hole was and told him to never talk about it again. Even in public satellite images, his land appeared to be covered. But here is the twist. People who investigated his story found no public records of anyone named Mel Waters. And a geologist named Jack Powell came forward saying a hole that deep could not physically exist since it would collapse on itself from the pressure. He even said he knew where Mel's hole was and took a camera crew to it. According to him, Mel's hole was nothing more than an abandoned mine shaft that was less than 10,000 feet deep. But who do you...
This woman left her daughter alone with 6 hungry pit bulls, but when she came home she saw a scene that shocked the entire world. Stephanie is only 4 years old and has loved animals since she was very little. One day, her mother Mary decided to adopt 6 adorable pit bulls as a birthday present for her daughter. Despite the stereotypes about these dogs, everything was going well until the unthinkable happened. One night, Mary needed to go to the supermarket to buy some things she needed to make dinner, and she had to rush to the store before it closed. She quickly got dressed and went to the supermarket. She went to the backyard and made sure that her dogs were locked in the cage for the safety of her daughter, who would be alone for a few minutes. She thought it would only take a few minutes, and that Stephanie would do fine on her own. But her daughter had a terrible idea. She opened the cage to feed the pit bulls by herself, and when the mother returned home half an hour later, the scene was incredible. Mary was speechless when she discovered the 6 pit bulls surrounding her daughter Stephanie. But when she saw what they did to her daughter, she was in despair and started crying a lot. She couldn't believe what was happening. Comment Pitbull to see what happened.
Disturbing history facts that school did not teach you. During medieval times, some women would shove live fish inside their bodies, if you know what I mean, and wait until the fish died inside them before cooking and serving it to their husbands. It was believed that this would increase their husband's love for them. Mother Teresa encouraged sick patients to suffer, but went straight to the hospital when she was ill. She is regarded by many as a saint for her dedication to helping the poor and sick in India. She believed suffering was a gift from God and encouraged her patients to accept it as a way to get closer to Jesus. However, when she herself fell ill with heart problems, she chose to get treated in modern hospitals. Charlie Chaplin met his future wife when she was 12 and he was 31. They first crossed paths on the set of the movie The Kid in 1920. 4 years later, due to Letta Gray's pregnancy, they got married when she was only 16 years old. Their turbulent union eventually resulted in one of the most expensive divorces of their time.
She fell in love with her daughter and married her. This is Stephanie from Oklahoma, and I wasn't even looking for this story. I was researching something else, and I came across this, and I was like, clicking that link. So Stephanie lost custody of her kids when they were younger, and their paternal grandmother took over. Later, she got back into her kids' life, and then she says her and her daughter just hit it off. And this was after she married her son in 2008 and then got it annulled in 2010. She said that wasn't a actual, with an S, relationship. She just married him to get him out of the military. Don't understand how this works, but that's what she said. Now this son right here says he tried that mess with her, but he wasn't going for it. He denied her advances. DHS got involved. She was 44 here and she was 26, so I don't understand how this worked with the DHS. I don't know if there was a child in the home or what, but DHS got involved and they were charged with incest. They are now divorced. Well, the marriage has been annulled. Oh, and the mother says she feel like she didn't do nothing wrong because her name wasn't on her daughter's birth certificate. Honey is in the blood.
Now, I know for a fact that I'm not the only one scared that sharks are going to be in my pool, right? Like, it's the most irrational fear ever, but I cannot go in a pool by myself or without, like, a bunch of different people in the pool at the same time because I'm scared of this happening, a freaking shark being in there. I don't know why. Like, I'm just so convinced that a trap door is going to open down there and a shark's going to swim out and it's going to eat me. I don't know why. Why? Am I the only one? Am I the only one? I can't be. Like, all of these photos are fake, by the way. They're all, like, AI or Photoshopped. No. Someone sent me this video and I just had to screenshot it because AI has gone too far. This is nightmare fuel. This is just I hate it. I know that it's fake. I know that it's AI, but that doesn't stop me from having nightmares about it. Like, this AI girly is more brave than I'll ever be, because what? Watch this photoshopped or AI video that I'm about to show, and how does it make you feel? And also, tell me that I'm not the only one. I need to be validated for this, please.
This is one of the worst pedophiles in world history. 62-year-old Colin Thackeray from England. Colin was a moderator on dark web chat rooms where he would instruct other pedophiles on how to abuse children and get away with it. On these sick forums, Colin went by the nickname Captain Birdseye, and that's because he, quote, portrayed himself as a sea captain roaming the oceans with a crew of children that he would sexually abuse. Colin lived alone and in squalor, and he reportedly spent 14 hours a day chatting with people online about the abuse of children. When he was eventually arrested, investigators found over 2,000 CP or CSAM images and videos on his devices, with 350 of those files being in Category A, or the most severe. And he not only helped to moderate other CP or CSAM sites on the dark web, he actually created his own with his own images. And disturbingly, other pedophiles online would see his posts and come to him for advice. Advice on how they could abuse children themselves and get away with it. And Colin was happy to share and happy to help out. He provided instructions on how to groom children, how to take images and videos of children, and yes, how to abuse children and get away with it. But disturbingly, at the end of his trial, Colin was only given 17 years in prison. That's right, for playing a part in the victimization of over 2,000 children, and for helping other predators get away with their crimes, he got 17 years in prison. I talk about this all the time. I do not think the laws and consequences surrounding these sorts of crimes are nearly strong enough. But if you want to join me in my journey to expose these people and show governments that this is not enough, check out my podcast. It's also a YouTube channel, The Conspiracy Files, where every single week I cover crimes like these and other injustices and aim to raise awareness around these sorts of crimes so that they can be eventually stopped, or at least until we can get some sort of an upgrade in the punishment for these crimes, because reading about these things and researching these stories and then finding out that a guy like this gets 17 years in prison is just incredibly disturbing and infuriating.
Leah Roberts vanished without a trace on March 23rd of the year 2000. She was 23 years old, and after leaving a restaurant in Bellingham, Washington, she just vanished in thin air. She had driven there all the way from Durham, North Carolina, and she'd been staying there for 4 days. Later on, her vehicle was found crashed and deserted in North Cascades National Park. And finding her car happened years after her disappearance. Upon going over the car and searching it, investigators found a lot of tampering in the car's engine. Authorities suggested that the vehicle has been purposely tampered with. There was footage of her entering a gas station, and she looked to be in good condition, and she was alone. But the weird thing about the footage, she keeps peering outside as if somebody's following her, if she's paranoid that somebody's watching her. Days before this, she withdrew almost everything from her bank account. Until this day, Leah Roberts' disappearance is still a mystery, and it is still unsolved. She had gone through a lot of trauma though, so people think she just kind of went off grid. She lost both of her parents in a very short span of time. She was a very bright student in North Carolina, but she dropped out of college a semester before she graduated to go soul searching. And once again, many think this is because of the trauma of losing her parents. But because she's alone, somebody well could have abducted her and taken her hostage. Scary thing about these cases, we might never know what happened. Let me know what you guys think about Leah Roberts' case in the comment section below, and as always, these videos are for informational purposes only.
So much has happened in the past 24 hours, it's insane. Trump announced that US residency is now officially up for sale. They unveiled this brand new visa program which has never been done before, called the Gold Card. It allows you to work in the US, gives you a route to citizenship, and it costs $5 million. Trump says that it will bring in wealthy, world-class global citizens. Next, Chile declared a state of emergency last night after a blackout plunged almost 19 million people into complete darkness. It affected almost the entire country. Hospitals, prisons, and government buildings were switched to backup generators. The internet and mobile phone services went down. You couldn't withdraw cash. National Guard forces were deployed onto the streets, and a curfew from 10 p.m. till 6 a.m. was put in place. Next, Trump signed a price transfer transparency executive order, which forces hospitals and health insurers to disclose healthcare cost details, and not estimates, but actual prices. Next, phone theft in the UK has got so bad that the government has given police new powers to enter properties without a warrant if tracking apps like Find My see that stolen devices are inside. In fact, this is just one of a whole package of new laws passed by the British government in order to tackle the country's knife crime, shop theft, antisocial behavior, cybercrime, etc. It's become one of the biggest legislative updates for policing in decades. Next, more than 250,000 Canadians have signed a parliamentary petition to try and revoke Elon Musk's citizenship and passport. If you didn't know, Elon is a triple citizen of South Africa, the United States, and Canada. Next, a mystery illness in the Congo has killed more than 50 people only hours after they began feeling sick. The Africa office for the WHO said that the outbreak began after 3 children ate a bat and died within 48 hours. CNN report that the still unknown illness has symptoms which are commonly linked to known deadly viruses, such as Ebola, dengue, Marburg, and yellow fever, but that researchers have ruled these out based on tests of more than a dozen samples they've collected so far. Next, and lastly, you ever wondered what happens if someone dies on a plane but you're still halfway there? Yesterday, on a Qatar Airlines flight, a woman collapsed in the aisle and died. Cabin crew tried to move her body towards business class, but, quote, she was quite a large lady and they couldn't get her through the aisle. So instead, they had to place her corpse, covered in blankets, next to this couple from Australia for the remaining 4 hours of the flight. As always, I'll keep you guys updated.
A cold case from New York has recently been reopened after remains were found more than 40 years after the victim disappeared. This is 25-year-old Karen Ramsey, and it is believed that she disappeared from Paterson, New York in May 1980. While police have looked for a missing persons report on Karen, it has been difficult to determine if one was even ever filed. But on April 16, 2024, almost exactly 44 years later, her body was found wrapped in plastic under concrete about 8 miles from her home. Her remains were found during excavation work for a new home in a heavily wooded area in Paterson. According to a neighbor, clothing and tape were found with her remains. DNA evidence identified the remains as belonging to Karen Ramsey on June 7th, but at this point, it is unclear where the sample came from to test against. Karen had been living in a condo complex in Brewster, New York with her husband John Ramsey before she disappeared. She had married John a few years after high school after they met working in the same building. At the time they had met, John was married to another woman, but they fell in love, he got divorced, and married Karen. In October 1977, the couple purchased a condo with both of their signatures appearing on a document when they purchased it. And then on September 28, 1981, their signatures both appear again on the sale of the condo. But this was more than a year after police believe Karen disappeared. And the Karen Ramsey signature on the documents do not look very similar. The document was notarized on August 17th for the sale, but the notary has since died, so they can't be questioned. According to court records, John Ramsey sued his wife for divorce in August 1980, and he also took out a legal notice around that time, claiming that his wife abandoned him and their infant. John Ramsey died in 2022, and according to his obituary, he married a woman in October 1981, just days after Karen's signature was on the condo sales papers. Karen Ramsey's death has been ruled a homicide, but her cause of death has not been made public. But the investigation into her death is ongoing, and police are trying to determine what happened to her. But right now, it's just an investigation because there have been no real leads. Apart from the fact that her signature on the purchase and sale of the condo do look different. But this doesn't prove anything, and other than that, they haven't really gone anywhere. But this investigation is honestly just getting started as her body was just identified last month. So hopefully Karen will get the justice she deserves. Rest in peace, Karen.
If you just won 30 mil and your mom's left eye surgery cost 29 mil, what you doing? We've got eyes at home. Now this is creative. I can definitely do Patrick's. That's facts. Email from HR. Your request for time off has been denied. Me on my flight, I didn't ask. I was just making sure you will wear out on vacation. If your boss dresses like this, you're not getting replaced by AI. If your lawyer comes in like that, you're going to jail. Roommate just said, I can't believe we've never had to buy trash bags. My roommate asked me why the cleaning lady didn't come this week. The week I didn't. First day at the job, I'm nervous AF. Bro is not getting paid. Okay, serious question. What's this for? We call it the old... Tucson Cartier necklace worn by Daphne Kluger for the Met Gala, valued at over $100 million. Purely hypothetical, how could you sell a $150 million necklace? Facebook Marketplace. Next question.
What if I told you the mother behind me was feeding her sons to cannibals? Behind me is Klara Maurova. She's from the Czech Republic and she had two sons, Jacob and Andrej. Her and her sister were part of this weird cult called the Grail Movement. They believed by doing good deeds that they would go to heaven. Now here's where it gets dangerous. This cult also believed that they were free to commit any crimes they wanted to and nothing would affect them. And they were also cannibals. Things now got even stranger when her sister showed up with an adopted Norwegian child named Annika. She was 13 years old. Some people believe she was actually 30 and posing as a child. She was in a trafficking ring and had a lot of sympathy for her. Soon, Klara started to forget about her sons and started thinking about adopting Annika as her own. That's when this weird doctor started emailing and texting her out of nowhere. He claimed to be Annika's physician. She met up with him, he showed her her medical records, he gained her trust. The doctor said to Klara that you cannot adopt Annika because her sons are so mean to her. This was the doctor's plan all along as a cult leader. Do you guys remember that cult I was talking about at the beginning of the video? The doctor is like the head of this cult. He said to fix this, she needs to beat her boys as much as she can, for every little thing, and she fell for it. This was to cure their evil spirits. The doctor said these treatments are not working now. You need to take them to a cottage very far off from everyone else. She met up there. There were several people there, including her sister and Annika's brother. The boys were put in cages and tortured in every single way you can think possible. People there started to skin the boys and eat their flesh. They also made the boys eat their own flesh as well. And Annika, the 13-year-old, she kept saying the boys were still being mean to her to continue this abusive cycle. She was also part of that cult and she was not 13. The whole cottage shock therapy ended and they went back home. The boys were treated the exact same back home though by their mother Klara. They were put in a cellar and locked up in there. Annika was living life in a room with a ton of toys and got everything she wanted. She was basically manipulating Klara this entire time. Now here's the way that she got caught and it is crazy. Her neighbor was setting up a baby monitor for his newborn baby. Now back in like the early 2000s, if you had a baby monitor nearby, it could pick up that signal and you could see what's in there. It could jam a little bit. He managed to see these boys tied up in cages in her basement. Could you imagine the horrifying look he had on his face seeing this? And he did what every good person would do. He called the police immediately to get them some help. The police came, everybody was arrested. Klara, her sister, and Annika. And it turns out Annika was a 33-year-old woman. Her real name was Barbara Sklorova. This is a picture of Barbara Sklorova right here, aka Annika, and she was the basis for the movie Orphan. In case the story is sounding familiar, it's basically Orphan. The doctor was actually the father of that girl Annika, aka Barbara. And Klara's sister was in on this cult the entire time and manipulated her. They all got about 5 to 10 years in prison. This story definitely had the wildest turn of events I've read about.